Welcome to Define, the podcast about the moments that shape us. I'm your host, Maddie, life coach, yoga teacher, and curious soul. Each episode, I speak to someone about a defining moment in their life, the kind that flipped their world upside down, cracked them open, and led them on a journey they never expected. This isn't about headlines or hero stories. It's about real life, real shifts, and what it takes to rebuild after the break. So let's get into it. Hey, Daniella, welcome to Define. How's it going?
Hi, Maddie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm really, really good. And you are so welcome here. How are you arriving into our time together today?
All right, a little bit on the sleepy side. I've been up since 5:30 this morning, so we're nearly starting. But yeah, I'm well. I've had a busy few weeks, but slowing back down after again, so quite chilled.
Life of a business owner, hey, and I'm really excited to chat to you today. But before we jump into it, I'd love it if you could tell us in your own words kind of who you are and what it is that you do.
This might be a mouthful. Hi, I'm Daniella. So I'm an internationally qualified yoga master. I teach yoga classes in community centres. I also opened up a yoga, wellbeing and reformer Pilates studio just under a year ago. And I am also the director of a non-for-profit that focuses on bringing wellness more accessibly into the local communities.
Yeah, not like you're busy or anything.
One or two things going on.
Apart from the fact that you're absolutely lovely, that's the reason I wanted to talk to you and bring you into this space, is because you have just achieved so much and juggle so many different plates, but all of them are kind of in such a giving space and, you know, really rewarding work. So I was just so excited to talk to you and hear a little bit more about what it is that you do. So I've been so excited to have you on. It was just really funny, I think, how we ended up being connected. I think we actually met on Facebook, which is like absolutely wild in 2025.
Yeah, it was. So I was teaching hot yoga somewhere in Sheffield and needed to find cover teachers. I think it was from a local yoga community group, wasn't it, that we're connected. And then, yeah, so grateful to have met you through there, because it's been so lovely getting to know you more and growing closer over this time.
Exactly. Yeah. Just always reminds me of just the power of community that can be on Facebook, which is almost a bit like cringy saying. I see it like it's our like parents' generation who spend a lot of time on Facebook, but actually it is a really powerful tool, like all social networks, and just right back at you as well, because I think from like the moment we started speaking, there was a bit of a connection, and ever since we've kind of just stayed in touch and explored different ways we can work together, and then now you're here.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this earlier, and it is amazing. There's a lot of not great things about social media, but also there's so many people that we wouldn't have connected with and met, or even growing my business in this current time. I wouldn't have gotten as many people in or helped as many people as I have if it wasn't for social media helping reach them.
Absolutely. So, define. Today, obviously, we'll be exploring and defining moments within your life. I wondered if you'd be happy to share a little bit about that before we kind of think about what was going on before then.
There's been a couple, and I was chatting to you a little bit earlier on about this. There's been a few in my life, and I think with so much going on, there's always been a catalyst for each progression that I've taken in life. There are a couple of main ones that come to mind. So there was a yoga class that I attended that pushed me into starting teaching yoga after being qualified for a few months and just lacking the self-confidence there. There was leaving a past relationship that catalyst so much of where my life is now. Opening up the studio. Yeah, I think they're main ones for me. I feel there's so many little defining moments on the way, but those two have been massive pushes to get me where I am now.
Thank you for sharing. And I totally agree. I think life is full of these defining moments, but as you said, there's sometimes these ones that stand out as being a bit of a catalyst for change, or a moment we can look back on and go, oh, that's where that started. That's where that road began.
Yeah, and you don't know it until after, do you? You don't know in that moment that that's what you're on the edge of, really, I guess.
I would love to talk in a moment more about that and that feeling in the moment. But if we take a step back, what was life like for you then before you went to that yoga class you mentioned?
Yeah, so I was working full time at a psychiatric hospital, at that hospital for around about 5 years. I have always had a lot of good in my life. I've always had a big loving family and supportive friends, a lot to be grateful for. But especially compared to where my life is now, there was a lot of unhappiness. Nothing ever felt quite settled or that I was doing what I really wanted to be doing. Not really much. I didn't know, entirely who I was, I don't think, at that point, and filled with a lot of self-doubt.
In that time, what kind of stories or maybe beliefs were showing up in your life?
I think it's one that so many people struggle with, but just not feeling good enough. As, I'm sure we'll go into more, what I briefly mentioned, I was in a relationship where I experienced a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of financial dependency, a lot going on there. And I stayed in that for a long time because I felt that's not particularly what I deserved, but that I didn't deserve better. I wasn't good enough there. I qualified as a yoga teacher and it took me a few months before I took on my first class because I didn't think I was good enough to be a teacher. Yeah, I think there was a lot that I didn't push myself to doing because I thought, a lot of not great things about myself.
It pains me to hear that. And I think, anyone listening will possibly feel that way as well, because you're right. That is such a common feeling, like particularly in women, that we have to prove ourselves or that we don't belong at certain tables or in certain spaces. And that's a really difficult place to be. So before we jump ahead and think about kind of where you are now, can you tell us a bit more about that first defining moment, so that yoga class that you said you went to?
So when I was just a little before then, when I was doing my yoga teacher training, I had a lot of conversations with people that I worked with family, and heard a constant narrative of, I can't do yoga. I'm not good enough. I'm not flexible enough. I mean, the narrative's there with other people straight away. I was really passionate about making it accessible for others. So me and my mum used to go to yoga classes in our local sports centre, and I've heard of other people just going to ones close by and be sometimes pushed to doing things that they didn't want to do. Or I'd never heard of a yoga block until I did my yoga teacher training, which is a prop that we use to help bring the ground up to you, to help support the body, to help make things more accessible in yoga, not just for beginners. I use blocks in my practice still regularly now. Yeah, so when I did my yoga teacher training, I found so much passion in learning about the ways I could make yoga accessible for others. I attended a yoga class in the summer after qualifying as a teacher. Went with my mum, we tried a new one out, and my mum really struggled. And I think had I not done my teacher training to have the knowledge I had, I would have probably struggled as well. There were blocks given out, but not one mention of how to use them. And there was a lot of times I wanted to help my mum, guide her, maybe give her different alternatives, show her how to use the block. I really didn't want to tread on the toes of the teacher. I wanted to respect the space that she was holding. No disrespect to this teacher at all. Everyone's got different styles. Everyone teaches different classes. But just for me, it was really important to make yoga a space that felt comfortable and safe and supportive for everyone's different bodies. So I left that class. I'd seen an advert for a yoga teacher about a week before, and it had been sitting on my mind. But I went and applied for that position the next day, and then I got my first yoga teaching job. So yeah, that class, I think, pushed me into thinking, I can do this. I'm here itching to help people in this session, so maybe I can actually do this.
Amazing. So you'd done that teacher training when you went to that class, and then in this moment it kind of became apparent, like, oh, I actually feel like this might not be the way that I teach that class, or quite as accessible. And I'm hearing that real need to want to make it inclusive. So powerful. And first of all, like, well done for just, having that moment you go, actually, like, there's another way that this could be done, and I'm going to be the one to do it, which is awesome. What do you think had to shift in you then? Because like you said, you'd seen that advert a week before. So what do you feel that actually shifted in you to enable you to go from, I've seen it, but I'm not feeling the confidence to apply for this, to this is me?
Through that class, my mind was reeling with, how I'd like to teach a class, how I'd help, and then feeling this urge to speak up to help, offer alternates in their class. And seeing this class full of people as well made me realise that actually I can give this a go. And I've definitely been overthinking. I was still very, very nervous. It was a very anxious day on the run up to teaching that first class. You came to realise why people are actually there, and it's not there to judge what you're doing and that they don't have a clue. And I've spent 200 hours at this point training, building up this knowledge, and it is there. I think it made me realise that with the thoughts going through my mind at the time, that I do have that knowledge and I am, capable.
So powerful. I have the knowledge and I am capable. And being able to hear that in yourself essentially unlocked something for you and enabled you to then start taking up that space.
Yeah, definitely was a huge push. And then after teaching that first class, and everyone had enjoyed it, and having that chance to be the one at the front offering different things for people and supporting them in the space. I fell in love with that straight away. So led on a spiral to where we are now.
And like, you're just stepping into exactly where I'd love to explore, because I think there's such an important learning here of that appreciation that you were nervous, stepping into that, it's all well and good doing the training, incredible foundation. It's another step to then go and stand up in front of people. This is a lesson not just for yoga teachers. This can be applied in any area. If you're doing a presentation at work or having a difficult conversation with someone, there's intellectualizing something and then there's embodying it and being at the front of a room and accepting that you were nervous, but almost harnessing that and doing it anyways.
Kind of going back to one of our first conversations about the power of Facebook and the connection there. On the day up to my first class, I was, completely wrapped with anxiety. I practiced that class maybe 100 times in my living room, but I reached out to other people who'd been on my training course, other yoga teachers, and just said, I've got my first class today. I'm feeling really anxious. What did you do in the run up to that? And I had instantly within that first hour, multiple people reaching out and giving advice from their experience and just validating that, they were the same and it's all right to just practice the breathing. And it's something that I make sure that I try and pass on to others who I see in the same boat as well, because I remember how scary that was.
It's so incredible to hear, like, the way that you equipped yourself and use that community and use that support. Like, we're not, or certainly I'm the believer of, like, we don't want to get rid of the nervousness. Like, it's there, it's telling us something, but we also need to find ways to make it an acceptable amount. We are bound to be nervous when we're doing something new. That means we're stepping out of our comfort zone. We're getting to the good stuff. It means you care. But there's also ways to manage that so it doesn't become so unbearable that you feel like it's not something that you can do. So like leaning on the community, practicing it. And also, just to jump in with a bit of my own experience, my first talk, like paid talk class in the UK, was an absolute disaster. I've written a blog post about it, which I'll share a link at the bottom of this episode. I came home crying. It was a disaster. But what I mean is, sometimes we can't always also plan for every eventuality, and things won't necessarily always go exactly how we want to. But I always think, if something doesn't work out, there's a lesson there. If we keep going, that's also where the learning is as well. And we both could have given up on the spot there in the nervousness or in the tears, but we didn't. And that's why you get to be where you are today.
That's made me think of, just on a much smaller scale, at the end of my first class, I had a complete mind blank. Everyone had come out of Shavasana, the final relaxation of a yoga session, set up, and then I had a room full of people looking at me. And I was like, oh, what do I do now? Everything went out of my brain. So I told everyone to bring one hand to the heart, one to the belly, and take 3 deep breaths. And that was so I could have 3 deep breaths and try and remember what I was doing. And I like to finish my classes with namaste. And that's actually been something that I now finish every single class with, because I like that taking a moment before we finish, taking a breath. So yeah, things can definitely go wrong. You can forget everything you're doing, but we sometimes gain things from those moments.
I was going to say, side note to anyone who's listening, probably yoga teachers can relate, or anyone who's ever been to any sort of yoga or any other type of class. Yeah, a lot of the time, a lot of that stuff is for us just as much as it is for you.
So I've worked with some teachers who've been just newly qualified. I sort of told them to tell people to take breath. People expect to take a few deep breaths in yoga, to maybe close their eyes, be in the moment. And I did that a lot in my first few classes, and that's so they'd stop looking at me. And so I could take a breath and calm down and remember what I was doing. So, but yeah, the clients there were loving it, eyes closed, chilling in the moment. So we both got out of it what we needed.
God, I think we need to do a whole podcast just on like first experiences of teaching yoga. I mean, seriously, if anyone's listening and wants to hear that, let us know, because we will totally do that. And I've got some really funny stories. But yeah, back to your defining moment. So you go to apply for this teaching role, you get it, you teach your first class. How then do things unfold for you?
Yeah, to be fair, it went pretty quickly from there. For those who don't know me, I'm quite chaotic. I've always got a lot going on. My mind runs at 1,000 miles an hour. So I was actually already doing my advanced teacher training at the time of starting my first class. So not long after I qualified, yeah, just got this taste for teaching, for holding space and helping people, and absolutely fell in love with that and wanted to do more. So I started a yin class at the same place I taught. And after I finished my advanced teacher training, I had a lot of thoughts of what I wanted to do. There was 2 main things that I wanted with my spaces. So one of them being making it accessible for more people, and then another one tying in the knowledge I'd got from working in psychiatric hospitals and the valuable information there that could help people in their day-to-day life that you don't get fed anywhere else. So there was kind of 2 things happening at once. I went on to do my chair yoga teacher training after my advanced teacher training, because I realized there was nothing around me at all that provided space like that.
If for anyone who's listening who's not really sure kind of what chair yoga is, do you mind sharing a bit more about what that is?
It's a yoga class that I teach sat down on a chair. There might be the odd moment where we stand up, but it's entirely optional, and it makes it accessible for everyone. People can come in wheelchairs. I've had people come with a broken leg. I have a lot of a older audience in that class of people who find it difficult getting up and down off of that, but still want to enjoy the benefits of yoga, of stretching, moving the body, the mindfulness. But yeah, it just holds an entirely accessible space for that. So yeah, I started teaching a chair yoga class after qualifying quite quickly. And at the same time, I started planning to do some day yoga retreats that gave a real space to pull together the yoga. So I was qualified in Hatha Vinyasa, so that's more your flowing styles of yoga. Yin, which I teach a little bit more on the restorative side that yin can be. So hold postures for a few minutes, supported with props, letting the body relax, taking a deeper stretch. And also yoga nidra, which is a form of meditation, and it brings the brain into the same state. Your brainwaves into the same state they're in when you're in a deep sleep. So it's also, might see it as non-sleep, deep rest. Yeah, so that's a good 40-minute practice.
Just before you go on as well, like just for anyone who's not familiar with yoga nidra, definitely something to explore. There's a lot of like amazing research done on yoga nidra. It's used actually in prisons for rehabilitation in loads of different settings. So yeah, just a little shout out, I guess, to yoga nidra.
Yeah, definitely one to give a try. I've had a lot of really great response, and I've done some private recordings for people who it's massively helped with their sleep and relaxation as well. So I'd got all this toolkit from my yoga teacher trainings, and then this knowledge from working in psychiatric wards, and it wasn't particularly inaccessible practices that we use to help people in some of the most distressing moments of their life to help ground them and bring them back down. And I wanted a way to teach more people this and help bring it into day-to-day life. So I started organising day retreats to incorporate those yoga practices, but also host mindfulness sessions within that and help build up people's personal toolkits for helping when life gets stressful, when we're struggling. Yeah, I could get into a deep rant about the mental health industry and just how challenging it is to get the support that you need, the length of wait lists. And yeah, there's not many other places you can get that support unless you can afford private, which isn't accessible for everyone. So that's kind of two things that were going on in parallel after I started teaching classes. And it was within that next year, I dropped part-time at work and started teaching more classes in community centres. I started in some gyms, in yoga studios, and then working on building up different events and retreats. And yeah, things sped up from there.
And you can sense that there's this ripple effect, right? Is that one yoga class pushed you or enabled you to take that step to apply for that teaching position, and then teaching that then had this ripple effect of you then just, the word coming to me is like expanding, like letting roots grow and going out into so many different spaces. And I think that for me, I'm sensing this real theme, even in your work before, within psychiatric hospitals, is this real sense of commitment to supporting people and that commitment to helping them holistically, mind and body, which is something that is the foundation of everything that I do. I think is absolutely integral to supporting people. As you were gaining momentum and all these different things were happening, what was shifting within you?
It built up my confidence massively, and it really helped spark life back into me, into what I wanted. And I think started to build up some of that self-worth. There was so many people coming to my spaces regularly and telling me how much I've helped them, and so grateful for having that. So this will kind of shuffle into the second defining moment, really. So I also started doing some counselling. It was about a year after I'd taken my first yoga class. I think this might have been about 2 years ago, somewhere around that mark. So then having that counselling and seeing the value of the spaces that I was holding and the positive effects I had on people, my mindset started to shift, and I started to realise that I deserved so much more. I had a lot of negative thoughts before of thinking that I was a horrible person. I was also bullied at school a lot. There was a lot that's compounded for many years, these really insecure thoughts. And it's something I still struggle with quite regularly. And I think it's important to have those open conversations. It's not something that goes away overnight. It's something I'm continuing to work on. But yeah, there was a huge shift over a couple of months, and I started to reach out more to friends. So that's not something that I'd done much before. A lot of thoughts of thinking that I was a burden, so I didn't want to be upset and take up the time of my friends. And I was worried that if I let people see every part of me, that then they'd leave, or not like me, all sorts going on. And I started to build up, and I started reaching out to friends and realised that, oh, okay, maybe they don't think that I'm this horrible person that I'd been made to believe in a couple of settings. And it started to build up my confidence more. And then again, was growing in what I was doing with teaching yoga in the space I was holding and seeing that impact on people. It's hard to not accept that you can't be such a bad person if you're spending so much time and energy and helping so many people. And even speaking like that, this is still a little bit challenging for me. But yeah, like I said, something I'm really working on. I think, especially in the UK, we're often told to be humble and to be quieter about ourselves, to not be braggy. And then it sends us sometimes too far the other way. That you also need to take time to reflect on, yes, I have worked hard and I do hold these spaces for people and I have helped others. All of that happened, and I built up the confidence to leave the relationship that I was in, following the building up of my self-worth and realizing that I didn't deserve what I was in. Then that was a catalyst to the studio and everything else that's happened in my life since.
You can really see on what a journey you've been on. And I think in probably everybody's lives, there are always these forks in the road, aren't there? And we can choose maybe a more comfortable route, what we think is a more comfortable route, not step out our comfort zone. But that maybe could have led you on a totally different path where you're not teaching yoga, and not to say you wouldn't have got somewhere else, but it is really interesting that when we move into these spaces that stretch us in a healthy way, that snowball, that ripple effect happens, and you built that self-confidence and that self-worth, and you were doing that whilst also giving a lot out, and probably, more than likely building that, helping other people build that, facilitating that growth for them. And that enabled you to then recognize, I don't deserve this type of relationship. I deserve more. I deserve better.
It helped me realize what I wanted out of my life, and that pathway couldn't happen where I was. Yeah. And like I said, I might have ended up somewhere else, but in that relationship, I was heavily financially dependent on. So I wouldn't have been able to build up to open up a studio. I also wasn't supported like I am now. If it wasn't to my partner now, Corey's, I owe him everything. He's the man in the background that's pushed me into everything that's happened in such a positive way, who picks me up and has helped build up that confidence and that self-worth so much more. And yeah, I actually turned down the studio at first, but he was the one who talked me around into it and built that. And if it wasn't for having him, then yeah, this year would have been completely different. But if I'd not left that past relationship, and that was a difficult thing to do, as you said, with the path of being comfortable, I knew what life would look like. And it's been a challenging journey, taking that in a different direction and leaving people that had been in my life for a long time. I owned a house, which I had to leave from leaving that situation and going into complete uncertainty. But at that point, I knew that though I didn't know what was coming and that was scary, it was scarier staying where I was. So yeah, I pushed out. And then since then, I've moved into a village that has always been the end goal for me. It was my dream place to live. And with, Corey, my partner, who is beyond supportive, brings me so much happiness every day. And I wouldn't be with him if it wasn't for this, and the studio wouldn't happen. There's so much that I've got to be grateful for now that came out of the discomfort of leaving a comfortable pathway for uncertainty.
Quick shout out to Corey and all the fantastic men supporting women who are driven and who are leaders. But, we also can have support as well, and want support and want love. And that is also okay to have that. And, we deserve that too. First of all, I could see the shift as you were talking about Corey and about how uplifted you feel and how obviously different that must be for you. And to recognize that and having a supportive partner is incredible. But I suppose I also want to take a moment to pause to reflect on your own strength, because you are the catalyst in this, and it is fantastic to have a supportive partner. But it was you that got yourself out of that abusive relationship and put yourself in a space of love and safety as well.
Yeah, one thing that's sometimes hard to remember, that there's so much of this, was from me.
It was from you, yeah. There's a saying, isn't there? I'm going to butcher this, I'm sure, but it's like, we receive the love we feel we deserve. That might not be the exact right saying, but that really jumped into my mind as you were talking about the shift in having that self-confidence and feeling valued in yourself, and that you've then attracted this really beautiful partnership.
Yeah, you're completely right there. And I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew what I wanted with my life, and I knew what kind of person I wanted by my side, and I held such a high standard to that, a real big wall that was hard to get through. And yeah, I was just so focused on building up my career and focusing on that. So then when I met Corey and he came in and supported me and my dream, and always taking that a step further, he helps me to look, I'll see, okay, what's happening this next year in the business? He's like, well, no, where do you want to be way down the line, and how can we get there? And that's because I didn't leave the situation I was in just to end up with someone that I didn't want to be with. I'm saying, look, I couldn't have dreamt up Corey.
Life and the world has a funny, whether you believe in whatever kind of higher being or not you believe in, I think the world has a plan, doesn't it? And people do tend to come into your life exactly when they're needed or when you're ready.
I massively believe in that. I can't say that I always have done, but I think everything happens for a reason and when it's supposed to, especially with these experiences I've gone through, I've trusted in that more and more. A similar thing happened with my studio. So I mentioned that I'd turned it down at first. I'd viewed the space. It was beautiful. I'd looked at a lot of different locations and it was perfect. But the timing just wasn't great for me. I was like, I want this exact space, but I just need it in a couple of months. So yeah, I turned it down. And the landlord, so my landlord's brilliant. He's actually massively into yoga, goes on to yoga retreats. When he heard what I wanted to do with the space was open up a yoga studio, he was adamant to have me in. So I think this was around about end of April, May time. I said, well, look, if I was to take it on, I can't really take it on until August. There was a lot that I was trying to work out that wouldn't have made it possible before then. So I'd, come away from that thinking, okay, wasn't maybe for me then. The landlord offered to give me the space and make it so that I could move into it in August. So basically hold this space empty for a few months, which was, to his own detriment, which is massively generous, so that I could open up the studio. And I thought, well, if that's not a huge sign from the universe, this is the right one. And it was, all working well with the timing. I couldn't be more grateful for the space that I've got and the community that's brought together. I think there's more things like that just come up at the perfect times, and very open to that now and receiving things that are meant for me.
What a prime example of that was the space you need to be in, almost when we can let go of a little bit of the control, things do tend to slot into space. I know that is so much easier said than done. It takes, for all of us, a lifetime of practice. But in those moments, like you just described, it's just perfection. That was meant to be. Does your landlord come to classes, or is he not living locally to the studio?
No, he doesn't live locally, but always checks in.
Get him to the next retreat.
Working on it.
And just, I suppose, just to pause for a moment and shout out your space, which is in Bolsover. Do you want to share a little bit about your space and where it is and what it is that you offer there?
It's in Bolsover, in the centre of Bolsover, and there's this gorgeous little courtyard. And what's really exciting about the courtyard as well is a lot of the businesses that are there are all led by women. So there's a hairdresser led by women, there's a florist, Bloom Floral, and Kirsty leads that. It's a lovely little community in itself. So when I first opened up the studio, it was 2 stories. I set the downstairs redecorated as a yoga studio. And I'd had ideas for the upstairs, but just nothing quite stuck or worked out how I wanted it to be. And I attended a reformer Pilates studio with my partner's cousin, fell in love with the practice straight away, and then converted the upstairs of the studio into a reformer Pilates studio, which I opened in January. So there's almost 2 micro studios going on. I now have 9 teachers at the studio as well as myself, which is amazing. All such lovely women who hold beautiful space. So we have lots of classes. I think there's around 30 classes a week at the studio. I hold regular events like sound baths. We've got cacao ceremonies, day and weekend retreats. They tend to be a little bit more rural. So I've got one in Clumber Park. There's a lot going on. Every month there's something different. I've got you coming soon to hold a gorgeous space for yoga and coaching, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, so I can attest that it's an absolutely stunning space and it is in a really beautiful location. If you're listening and you're not local to the area and thinking, where the hell is Bowls Over, you might have to Google it because it is a village about 25 minutes drive from Sheffield. I want to just jump back to one thing you said earlier because it's rooted in my mind before we kind of start to draw our conversation to a close. Is you were talking about when you were going through this process of kind of rediscovering yourself and taking these steps forward, something that really jumped out at me was you started to talk to your friends in a way that you didn't feel able to before. And I thought that was a really interesting, I suppose, internal narrative that you had, that you didn't want to be a burden. The reason I'm calling back to it is I hear this time and time again with my own friends, also in my coaching work. And I'm just wondering what unlocked for you to enable you to feel like you could rely on those people? And then how did that shift things for you as well?
So at the time, I had a lot going on. And yeah, this is when I was in that past relationship. Yeah, definitely didn't get any personal support there. And I was in counselling. And yeah, my counsellor set it as homework for me and was trying to build me up and pushed to do that. Yeah, and there was one day I was really struggling. I'd come home from work and was crying, and I'd kind of hidden in the kitchen and was like in the same thing of, I don't know what to do. And rather than going down a more negative spiral like I would have at that point, I called up one of my friends, said to her, I'm struggling, and my counsellor's told me I need to call friends, and that's about as much as I know what to do at this point, because I'd not lent on friends and I was still nervous about showing that side. And yeah, she was brilliant. And then she was right there. That's what was going on. We talked through it. Yeah, and then I left the phone call feeling supported, feeling that love and validation. The brain always tries to prove itself right. If you're feeding it these negative narratives all the time, it's going to find all the evidence to prove itself right. And then in that moment, it proved everything in my mind wrong, because I spoke to a friend, I hysterically cried down the phone, and I didn't get shouted at, and I didn't push my friend away, and I got the support and love that I needed. Yeah, that created a huge shift for me to then start trusting to do that. And again, it was still a little bit uneasy, took a little bit of time to build up. But yeah, now it's something that's not difficult to do and has helped me grow and find a lot more peace, because I've really got the support. And I knew that I did have the love, and I knew I had amazing friends, but I think it's very vulnerable to show people what you feel is the worst side of yourself. So have been held in that space by my friend the way that she did. Yeah, that's what shifted a lot for me.
It's interesting to see the parallels between, or certainly the parallels I'm drawing between when you first started teaching yoga and when you first started relying on that support network of like, there's this uncertainty, it's new. You know, your brain was probably like, no, this isn't something for me. And then this constant ambition of yours to sort of prove that wrong and reprogram your brain, reprogram your body to trust in those spaces.
Really uncomfortable, and it's really challenging to do those things. But I think the thing that I've reminded myself in all these points in my life is it's not working. Things as they are isn't working. I'm not happy. It's not who I want to be and where I want to be. And you can't get to that point without pushing yourself out of where you are now and growing and healing. And it's not a glamorous journey, but yeah, one that's, as I've said, gotten me where I am today and brought me so much more happiness and quality of life, and is worth the challenge.
Oh, such nuggets of wisdom. Because like we said, you can stay on a path. Maybe you're comfortable, but it's like this leveling up, this getting into what you're supposed to be doing, getting to those moments where things align. That's messy, but it's like, I think we can both attest, totally worth it. So I've loved this conversation. It's been so beautiful. What's really stood out to me is this theme around community. There are just people in the world, I feel, that are meant to be at the heart of communities. They're creating them, they are fostering them and committed to them. And I just so feel like you're one of those people. Not only like community in a, any old community, like this theme around accessibility, inclusivity just comes through so strongly with all of your history working to support people with their mental health, and being on your own journey with your own mental health as well positions you to be such a powerful kind of part of a community. So yeah, it's such a pleasure to kind of hear about your story so far.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to have me here today and create such a safe space to talk about it all. And it's not always easy, but I think it's so important to keep these conversations going.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Before I let you go, I have a sort of signature question I ask everyone who comes on. What would you say to past you, so that version of you before any of these defining moments, standing right on the edge? Is there any advice you'd give to them?
Probably to trust yourself, to trust the people around you and in what you're doing. Somebody said to me fairly recently that there's no way you can be this passionate and hardworking towards something and it not work out. And I think there was a lot of times that I've doubted that. But yeah, that piece of advice is definitely something that's sticking now. And I think I could have done with hearing before.
Yeah, that just got me fired up. So there's no way that you could be as passionate and devoted for something and it not to work out. Well, on that note, I'd just like to say again, a massive thank you for you coming on, sharing your defining moment. We'll share all of the beautiful stuff Daniella's doing in the show notes. But yeah, thanks, Daniella.
It's okay. Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Define. I hope this story reminded you of your own strength, your own shifts, your own becoming. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and journey on.